Coming soon to own on
YouTube and Twitch. The World War II serial killer who terrorized London. Now, I'm a little sick, so we gotta power through it. If you hear me coughing or sneezing or sniffling or some shit, we powering it through it. We're gonna get.
The world burned with conflict. World War II was approaching its height, and for the first time in human history, the combatants rained death on the civilian populations of their enemies from the air. Nazi Germany traded air raids with the beleaguered United Kingdom, and at some point, the bombing was so intense that it seemed only a matter of time before it might force a British surrender. The top minds of the British Air Ministry convened to discuss the problem, and their solution was as effective as it was simple: a blackout. Without lights on the ground to use as a navigation aid, German aviators would have a much harder time hitting their targets. If the blackout worked, it could save thousands of lives. And so by 1942, a vast array of blackout regulations had been published by the British government.
Now, I felt like that should have been the first thing they did after the first bomb attack. I feel like it's kind of common sense. Like, you can't hit what you can't see. But then again, there is a likelihood that they have that shit mapped out pre-plannedly, and they just drop that bitch randomly throughout the sky. Wherever it lands. But I feel like, this was probably something they should have did earlier.
These required that all windows and doors should be covered at night with suitable materials such as heavy curtains, cardboard, or paint to prevent any glimmer of light being spotted by a German aircraft.
Then you just turn the lights off.
Essential lights such as traffic lights and vehicle headlights were fitted with slotted covers that would also deflect beams downwards to the ground. The measures were effective at reducing casualties to German bombing raids. However, there were some serious downsides to the blackouts too. Light restrictions massively increased the risks of driving at night, and deaths in road accidents increased as a result. And as an almost perpetual...
Wait, hold on. See, that's the one thing I don't get about drivers. You're in a government-mandated blackout, and your instinct is to drive recklessly in a pitch-black road with dim as hell lights. Your first instinct is, I'm going to drive dangerous and fast. Because to get in a fatal car crash, you have to either hit something very solid or drive very fast and reckless.
A shroud of darkness fell over the British Isles every night. Those that wished to use its cover emerged to prey on their communities. Police saw an increase of all kinds of theft, gang-related activities, indecent assault, and even serial murder. London in particular saw a sharp rise in nocturnal criminality during the era of the blackouts, one that didn't go unnoticed by a Royal Air Force crewman named Gordon Cummins. This is the story of the Blackout Ripper.
Oh shit, the black. He used the blackouts to commit serial killing. RIP. London, 1941.
Gordon rented an apartment with his wife in the central London district of Southwark, a relatively older part of the city, settled into the south bank of the River Thames. He had dreams of being a fighter pilot, of taking to the skies and dogfighting with the German aces. But Gordon had other inclinations too. You see, despite his lower middle-class upbringing, Gordon fancied himself something of an aristocrat and developed a taste to match. He would often visit the more high-end hotel and clubs in the West End of London and spend outrageous amounts of money on champagne, mainly in an effort to impress those in attendance.
He was having big time.
Attention, Gordon would fabricate stories of being the illegitimate son of some wealthy old lord, one who was granted quite a healthy allowance too. He began to tweak his formerly rough Yorkshire accent into one of a well-spoken...
I feel like flexing Nepo baby money is not that big of a flex, even back then. Versus like earning that money versus Nepo baby money, I feel like that's not that big of a flex.
Member of London high society, introducing himself as the Honourable Gordon Cummins to those he rubbed shoulders with. Yet in order to support this lifestyle, Gordon frequently engaged in acts of theft or embezzlement in order to finance his elaborate ruse. He told people he was soon to be a fighter pilot too, a hugely admired profession at the time. But this too was a falsehood. Gordon's entire life was a lie.
Goddamn, nigga will say anything for attention.
And as the war rolled on,
like that, bro.
The darkness outside seemed to foster a darkness inside too. One that boiled up and spilled over into the spring of 1942, turning the dark streets of London into a pitch-black hunting ground.
I was about to say, I bet you that shit probably felt like The Purge. Pitch black, no police can really help you, and you basically by yourself until morning. 1942.
On the Sunday evening of February 8th, 1942, Gordon Cummins had dinner with his wife, Marjorie, in their Southwark apartment. During dinner, he asked her if he could borrow a £1 note since he wanted to have a night on the town. Marjorie obliged him, handing over the money to her serviceman husband and wishing him a good evening. To her, Gordon was a hero, serving his country in a time of war. She didn't mind that he wasn't home much or that he was distant when he was. He was busy, after all, helping fight the Germans. Gordon thanked his wife, leaving the apartment at around 6:30 that evening. Marjorie would have smiled and waved goodbye, completely unaware of the terror her husband intended to inflict. The next morning, a man named Harold Butcher was performing his daily checks of the local air raid shelters. He would ensure that they were in a fit state to withstand German bombing, and that there was no one left sleeping in them come morning, as they were often patronized by drunks and vagrants. But during a check of one particular shelter in Montague Place, he saw the shape of a woman lying on the ground. He tried to rouse her, but she didn't respond, and it was then that he noticed the scarf that was wrapped around her face and how her underwear had been pulled down below her knees. He kneeled down to take a hold of the woman's hand, only to find that it was cold. The woman was a pharmacist named Evelyn Hamilton, and she'd had the life strangled out of her on her 41st birthday.
Oh, her birthday?
Her handbag was found nearby, but it had been completely emptied of belongings, presumably by the person that had killed her. Police had hoped to find the culprit's fingerprints on the bag, but found it was completely devoid of any forensic evidence. The only clue they had was the coroner's report that the killer was left-handed, and unless the killer struck again and provided more to go on, they would probably never be found. But as the saying goes, be careful what you wish for. You might just get it. Because on February 10th, the morning after Evelyn Hamilton's body was found, 2 electrical workers drove over to a house at 153 Wardour Street in Soho to perform some repairs. No one answered the door to the home, but given that the work was essential, the 2 electricians let themselves into the unlocked home and set out performing their tasks. For some reason, one of the workers found himself having to go into the master bedroom to check some wiring, but when he entered the room, he yelped in horror at the sight which greeted him.
2 dead bodies.
Lying on the bed was the lifeless corpse of 34-year-old Evelyn Oatley. There was blood around her mouth and nose from where she had been beaten mercilessly, all before her killer had cut her throat from ear to ear. Much like Evelyn Hamilton, this new victim had also been stripped, and on this occasion, the killer had taken their time to extensively mutilate her intimate area with a razor blade and tin opener. The crime scene was even more disturbing.
He was cutting up the cooter?
The killer had left behind some forensic evidence. Fingerprints recovered from the blood-stained tin opener suggested the killer was left-handed.
I forgot forensics was not how as profound as it is now, but it was still a thing. Because when he said forensics, I was I thought they didn't have that back in the day.
And strongly suggested that it was the exact same person that had killed Evelyn Hamilton in the Marylebone air raid shelter. The fingerprints didn't match any of the police records, but interviews with Oatley's friends and neighbors did yield some important clues. One eyewitness mentioned to investigators that night before, Oatley had been approached by a young mustachioed airman with chestnut brown hair outside a restaurant in Shaftesbury Avenue. A neighbor claimed to have seen Evelyn returning home at around 11:40 p.m., confirming she had been in the company of a strange man. The same neighbors said that sometime after midnight she heard the sound of Oatley's wireless radio being turned up much louder than usual, but chose not to complain to her about it. What's clear to us now is that this mysterious man had drowned out the sounds of Evelyn's terrified cries with the sounds of the radio, and that if her neighbor had only asked her to keep the volume down, she might have survived that.
What the fuck? No, she wouldn't have survived. She would have walked over there and knocked on the door, and then he would have knocked her out and drug her upstairs too. It would have been both of them. Just keeping the buck. I'm just saying, she don't look like one of the strongest fighters in the world. I don't think if she knocked on that door that asked her to turn that radio down, it would go good in her favor. No, one of them might fuck around and escape, but I'm just saying.
That night. But even as the police were busy investigating the left-handed killer's latest victim, he was busy planning a fresh hunt. For the third morning in a row, some unfortunate Londoner stumbled upon the dead body of a murdered woman. This time it was a 43-year-old prostitute by the name of Margaret Lowe, strangled to death in her Marylebone apartment with her own silk stocking. But much like his previous victim, the left-handed killer had taken the time to ferociously mutilate his prey with a variety of household items. The forensic pathologist who performed her autopsy remarked that the wounds inflicted by her killer were quite dreadful, adding that the perpetrator was a savage maniac who indulged in a wicked lust to perpetrate the most diabolical injuries on the women he killed. He also confirmed that the extensive stab wounds to Margaret's right-hand side confirmed that the killer was left-handed. What's equally as disturbing is that a neighbor of Margaret Lowe's heard a man leaving her apartment in the wee small hours of the morning, one who whistled cheerfully to himself as he walked outside into Gosfield Street. Marylebone police were up to their eyeballs investigating the 3 murders of the previous week. They needed a solid break to catch their man, and as fortune would have it, one walked right into their station on February 12th. Catherine Mulliquet said she had been drinking with a handsome Royal Air Force man in a local pub and had agreed to take him back to her apartment. She later stated a strange smile appeared on the man's face as she removed her clothing, lay upon her bed, and beckoned him to join her. He removed his clothes, then approached Catherine in a manner that at first seemed affectionate, but to her shock and horror, he slammed his knees into her stomach and attempted to strangle her as he pinned her body to the bed with his own weight. Catherine fought her attacker, kicking him in the stomach and breaking free from his grasp. She then ran screaming from her flat to the house of a neighbor before rushing down to the police station to file a report. Catherine gave the police a detailed physical description of her attacker, something they had desperately needed. But Catherine came with another remarkable stroke of luck, one of her attacker's possessions. In his rush to escape,
she grabbed the belt.
RAF webbing belt in her apartment, one that had an RAF regimental number stitched into it. Police contacted the Royal Air Force, inquiring as to which airman was assigned the number 525987. They discovered that number belonged to none other than Gordon Cummins.
Wow.
Detective Sergeant Thomas Shepard formally questioned Gordon on Valentine's morning of 1942. He admitted that he may well have attacked Catherine Macaulay in a drunken haze, but was extremely apologetic, insisted he had attempted to properly compensate her. However, he completely denied murder and explained away the bruising on the knuckles of his left hand by claiming he had gotten his hand stuck in an aircraft engine while performing routine maintenance. Although they couldn't quite charge him with murder yet, the police could hold Cummins on charges of aggravated assault, which would buy them time to put together a proper case against him, and put a case against him they did. The case against Cummins was so airtight that a jury returned a guilty verdict after just 35 minutes. Each avoided making eye contact with Cummins as they filed back into the courtroom, who displayed no emotion as the verdict was read aloud. Gordon's wife, however, who also believed he was innocent, burst into ugly tears as her husband was pronounced guilty. When asked whether he had any legal reason or cause as to why the court should not impose the penalty of death, Cummins replied, "Because I am completely innocent, sir." But the judge was not convinced, and Cummins was then formally sentenced to death by hanging.
Wow.
Upon imposing this sentence, the judge stated, "Gordon Frederick Cummins, After a fair trial, you have been found guilty, and on a charge of murder. As you know, there's only one sentence which the law permits me to pronounce, and that is you to be taken from this place to a lawful prison, and thence to a place of execution, and that you there will be hanged by the neck until you are dead. On June 20, God.
I didn't know they were still doing hangings in the 40s, like for death penalty charges. Like that's crazy.
God, have mercy on your soul. Gordon Cummins was executed by Albert Pierrepoint at Wandsworth Prison on June 25, 1942. Newspaper reports of the day indicate Cummins was given a glass of cognac to calm his nerves. He then walked...
Wait. No. You're not supposed to give this nigga shit to calm his nerves. He's supposed to be nervous in this situation. He's supposed to be panicking. He should damn near have a heart attack before he steps on that platform. This nigga just murdered... Well, I was about to say white women, but he murdered multiple women and violated their bodies. I'm just saying, you should have gave this nigga shit. Fuck this nigga's last meal.
To the scaffold, flanked by 2 warders, without offering any assistance. The entire execution process lasted less than 2 minutes, and Gordon's execution became the only one in British history to have been performed during a German air raid. What's curious...
They were hanging him during an air raid.
To note is that very few of Cummins' victims had any kind of defensive injuries when their body were found. Defensive injuries are those incurred when a person tried to defend themselves from an attacker. And if a murder victim lacks them, it can mean one of 2 things. Either the victim knew the person that killed them and had no reason to suspect danger, but the killer was able to take their victim completely by surprise.
Yep.
What's horrifyingly clear is that Gordon Cummins used Britain's wartime blackout restrictions to remain undetected while committing some of the vilest acts of murder since Jack the Ripper. Gordon even earned himself the nickname the Blackout Ripper, thanks to the similarities between his own crimes and that of Saucy Jack.
Have they ever caught Jack the Ripper? Well, not caught. Have they ever figured out who Jack the Ripper was?
He enlisted in the RAF to protect his country, when in reality, his only interest was preying on those who were too vulnerable to defend themselves. Yeah. People who'd been lucky enough to avoid German bombs, only to fall victim to a vicious, shameful predator.
Hey friends, thanks so much for watching. Just a quick heads up, I release new videos.
Nah, that's a crazy thing to think about. Imagine in the middle of your, not country, but your state being bombed. You got to have nightly curfews where you can't have no electricity on. And in the midst of all that, you have to worry about bombs and stuff, car accidents. Now you got somebody going around and killing just innocent people throughout the night. Not even military soldiers. That is amongst y'all. He's just living amongst y'all. Y'all gotta have a blackout every single night. And that's just a scary thought to think about. But that was the World War II serial killer who terrorized London. Let me know how you feel down below with that being said. See you later, dude.
I'm not trying to score. Your heart's an open door. I got the key. I'm trying to keep composure and some more. I know you want some more. Can your body hear me? Want you to feel me?